This leads me to introduce Sarah.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks, Lewis.
You've just frightened me now with the no bad language. I'll promise to try and keep a check on myself.
No one sticks to it.
Right, my name is Sarah and I'm an addict. So I was going to start with the Step 11 prayer because it kind of keeps me centred and makes me remember why I'm here. But I couldn't find it on my phone, my battery's gone, so I'm going to read from a quiet piece which is all about Step 11. It's today's reading and it's Improving Conscious Contact. Work in Step 11 has been incredibly rewarding. My conscious contact with God grows stronger all the time. I am learning to trust the process and listen to my gut without my head intervening. And that's from Hope, Faith and Courage, page 96. Of all the relationships that I'm learning to rebuild in my recovery, two remain perpetually in the spotlight. My relationships with myself and with my higher power. These two comprise the foundation of every other relationship in my life. An intimate, loving relationship with myself automatically brings me closer to God. Conversely, my relationship with God would lead me into a loving, close, spiritually intimate relationship with myself. Step 11 shows me how to do both sides of this equation. I pray and meditate to improve my conscious contact with God and with myself. I ask to be shown the best possible course of action for myself each day, as well as the power to do my part while staying just enough out of the way to let God do his part too. This step goes on to focus on the continued need for my praying for the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry that out. Here we pray and meditate to seek his knowledge. We ask our higher power for the right thought, answer or decision. Step 11 specifically instructs us to connect with God, with the God of our understanding, by praying, asking our God to reveal his will for us and to provide the means to carry that out. I pray to continually nurture an intimate, loving relationship with myself and the God of my understanding. May these connections grow stronger and deeper as I mature in recovery and in life. That's just beautiful, and as it says, it's the Step 11 is like the foundation of it's at the heart of my programme, and whenever I feel myself swaying or not doing enough, I always bring myself back to prayer and meditation and that contact with my higher power. I have a morning routine, and sometimes, you've got to be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning, the meditation goes out of the window, and I feel that in myself throughout the day. It's this stuff that keeps me centred. I haven't actually had much work recently, and I've found myself with a lot of time on my hands, and I've been isolating. And I think I totally believe that without this stuff, that would get way out of hand, and it's my conscious contact that makes me phone that newcomer for a coffee in the afternoon. It makes me even go to voluntary work. That makes me not busy on a Thursday night when I'm asked to share. I've still been doing my meetings and seeing my sponsees and taking those calls, but I could be doing more, But without this, and without that morning routine, I'd wake up, hit the sofa, turn the telly on, and I'd be there for months until my head told me it was shit and I needed a drink. So that's why I say this stuff's at the heart of my programme. It's what keeps me going, and it's the starting point for all the other steps to take place. We learn them in order, but for me that is my starting point each day, because it's what sets me up and centres me and keeps me focused. Tell you a bit about my life. I had quite a mad childhood, very dysfunctional, very mixed up. Alcoholic father. My earliest memories, seeing him trashing my mum on the kitchen floor and hearing all of that going on and feeling it was my fault somehow, There was the divorce, and we moved around a lot. My dad was a hippie, so we spent a lot of time at festivals and on site, on buses, sleeping in benders, and seeing people around us just getting out of it and actually having a good time. My mum would tell me the complete opposite, that they were going to die, so I was quite feared up and confused from a very young age. My mum lived a straight life after she left my dad, but the person she married was abusive to me and my sisters, and again lived in fear at home. And you know, you often hear people talk about that void in their life and not feeling part of, and not feeling like they were different or separate. Now, I had that feeling, but I always put it down to all the stuff that was going on. With my dad's lifestyle, everything was very secret. You couldn't talk about drugs or drug dealing or old Bill or anything like that, because it would cause trouble. So that whole lifestyle was different. You couldn't talk about that at school, and obviously what was going on in the home, you couldn't talk about that either. And I felt very kind of insular, but on the outside I was very rah, rah, rah. And look at me, it's that whole high ego and low self-esteem stuff going on. So as a teenager I did the usual, started with drink, and I had already drunk. I used to nick my dad's drinks when we were partying, and I was like, I'd blag him as well, and it'd be like, yeah, Dad, more beer, it's naughty but nice, and he would give it to me. So I think I already had that alcoholism in me. I've seen younger kids drink beer and hate it, you know. I wanted more all the time, and it was the same as a teenager. If one of my group of friends said, yeah, we drank a whole bottle of martini, I'd buy that bottle of martini and I'd try and drink the whole lot, and that'd be me on the floor puking and pissing myself at the same time, you know. And getting up the next day and doing it again, and, you know, there's lots of consequences. And so I left home early. My mum kicked me out, and I was back and forth into the home, to be honest, between the ages of 15 and 17, and I ended up in a violent relationship because my vulnerabilities were so raw and so obvious, you know. I didn't feel I deserved any more. I couldn't get out of that relationship. I had nowhere to go, and I stayed, and eventually I managed to get out of it. I got a bonus from work, and I did a runner. My father had moved to Spain, and I went over there because that was going to save me. So that whole scene is like New Age travellers and just parties, and I thought I'd landed, you know. I was like cocaine, alcohol, hotel rooms, parties, and squatting other people's buses, and rich drug dealer boyfriend. I thought I had it made, and obviously money runs out and everything goes to shit and you're just left. And eventually I came back to England trying to sort my life out, and I had a nice relationship, I had good jobs, but I was still drinking heavily every night, partying all weekend. And we had a tragedy in the family, and my brother-in-law hung himself and left my sister with 2 young children, and we'd already tried heroin. And when I was trying to look after her, one of the guys in the flat opposite selling gear, a friend of ours from school, and, you know, we knew it took the pain away. And within no time, the heroin addiction had crept in. And, you know, when I was on heroin, I wasn't drinking, and I'm a nightmare when I'm drinking. I'm actually a nicer junkie than I am an alcoholic. At least I'm peaceful. But in no time, it goes from smoking to having hits, and I went from I'm not a junkie, I'm just a heroin addict, to fuck it, I'm a junkie, waking up ill, needing that hit, going out shoplifting, and just finding my money every day to have another hit. I hated it, fucking hated it. I hated it right from the beginning. And I never, ever, ever wanted that for myself. It was dark and it was horrible, and I ran away again to Spain to get clean, and swapped my drug, swapped my scene, swapped my drug, back to cocaine, back to alcohol, back to party drugs, back to ketamine, MDMA, cocaine. And this is just a pattern throughout my 20s, well, throughout my life, really. I keep running to Spain and doing things differently, thinking I'm doing things differently there, but not, just doing it in a different style. Coming back to England, ending up on heroin, and later on crack. And it took me years to realise that, well, it wasn't until I was in rehab recently that I realised I was always running away from myself and that I was the problem. Yeah, you know, that's the pattern. I tried to get clean when I was 30. That's it. I left my council flat in the town I was living in, and you know, we'd been busted loads. I thought the flat was going to save me. It was a crack house within 6 months, and I ran away. I ran up to stay with some friends in Lincoln, and I managed to stay clean for a bit. I went to university and somehow got a degree. I think I had 2 or 3 detoxes in the last year, but I left with a really good degree. And in between all of this as well, there were a lot of deaths. There were suicides. They weren't all drug related, a lot mental health related, and you know, I felt jinxed. I felt I could never recover from that grief. I made it all about me. Half of it is an excuse to drink. Half of it is just not being able to deal with the pain of loving people and losing them. You know, I just couldn't cope with that stuff. I always felt it was no, that's me. I'm so sorry. I thought my battery had gone. No, where was I? Yeah, so I finished uni with a good degree, and I moved down to London, stayed with friends, and but I was just depressed. I couldn't. It was like I was scared of life. I had this degree, and it's like, wow, now what? Oh my God, I'm supposed to use it. What can I do? I don't know how to go about all of that. And I ended up walking the streets of Camden, like in the daytime, just trying not to drink, but drinking, and trying to stay out of my friend's way and not cause trouble, but coming back at the end of the day, trashed and out of it. And, you know, we were staying in a tiny little studio flat, and, you know, the stuff I put her through, it's just not how you treat a friend, I now know. She was looking after me. So I got a call saying that my dad was ill and he had cancer, and I ran over to Spain to look after him. And in that 18 months, I thought I was doing really well because I didn't bring it into the house, but on the outside of the house, I was just a complete mess, you know, like sleeping with a guy for the wrong reasons and just partying and pulling myself back into the house to do the looking after, but being there but not really being there. And eventually he died, and there were 3 other close family deaths at that time as well, and I went off the rails. No, I didn't actually. I ended up with a boyfriend who didn't want me to drink, so I was with somebody for the wrong reason, but it was for safety, security, and I thought he could fix me. After a year of sneaky drinking, I couldn't do it anymore, and I left him, and I was out on my own again, and the anxiety of being out on your own, being out on my own, and faced with life again, and I just couldn't cope with it. And yeah, alcohol again, and moving back to Spain, and finding another boyfriend who was going to fix me, and it just didn't work, and my mind was really lost it now. I was obsessing about, yeah, she said that, and did that hurt me? I had paranoia, I had real bad mental health problems, and eventually my boyfriend and I split up, and at that point it was just dark, and I tried to kill myself 4 years ago now. But God showed up as I was taking these pills, and whilst I'd thought about my nieces and my family, it didn't mean anything to me at that point. It was they were better off without me. But at one point I had like a vision of my 16-year-old pregnant niece, and I knew she needed me, and it was a big warm feeling, and it stopped me taking those pills, and it made me call for help, and I know now that was God. And I'm grateful for that, because I've seen my niece's baby growing up now, and I wouldn't have had that, and she's had me too sober, which is she's forever grateful for as well. So after that I came back to England, and I wasn't coping again. I was drinking at my sister's, and complete mess, tying things around my neck, crying, seriously mentally ill. And I moved away to stay with my stepmom, my brother, who's was an addict. And so when I was giving up, I was engaging with the drug services at this point, and when I was giving up, he wasn't, and when he was giving up, I wasn't, and obviously it just kind of ended up in a mess. And there's just no place for this addiction to go. I was going to end up dead unless something happened, and you know, stuff did happen. I got kicked out of the dry house I was living in, and I was put in for rehab before April, because I knew, obviously that's when the funding came in, I knew that was going to be my only chance. And I wasn't using massively then because I was in a dry house, but I was like white knuckling everything and obviously slipping, and I got kicked out. So I was street homeless at that point, and this woman kindly put me up for a couple of days, and I ended up back at my sister's. 5 days after being at my sister's, I got a phone call to say that my little brother had died, and I just lost it again. I was already there, and I just went out. I wasn't taking any of my like bipolar medication, and I was just taking crack and heroin and Valium, and nobody knew how to deal with me. I had an ambulance called on me 3 times in a week, and in the final one I tied cable ties around my neck in hospital and got admitted to a psychiatric ward where they detoxed me, and whilst I was in that psychiatric ward, I got the phone call to say that I had rehab, and I had to choose between Portsmouth or Bournemouth, and it was coming up to summer. I was like, wow. So that's how I ended up in Bournemouth. So spiritually and emotionally, I crawled through the door of a treatment centre locally, and knew that that was my only chance. If I didn't shut my mouth, open my ears, open my heart and open my mind, I was just going to die, and I know that I wasn't going to get funding anymore, and I knew that I could not live that life anymore. I was completely on the floor and completely willing to take on and take this help that was so graciously given to me. And I did that. And it's not easy. Rehab's not easy. Grieving in rehab's not easy. But I learned so much. I learned so much about life, and I got introduced to the 12 steps, which, as it says, is designed for living. And it's something I wish I was taught when I was a teenager, because, you know, today I get feelings or problems or resentments, and I write them down, and I look at them, and I look at my part, and I put things right, I put things better. I don't let the isolation overtake me. Even if I'm feeling that way, I will push myself to go out and do the things that God wants me to do, that keep me alive. You know, and I pass this stuff on to my sponsees, and I learn so much from them as well. Mostly about the power of selflessness, you know, and seeing somebody get this stuff and encouraging somebody through it and feeling useful in life, rather than the hindrance I was at my friend's flat or wherever I was staying, you know. And yeah, it's been beautiful finding God, because I've always kind of felt that there was something more, but I was so put off by the religion side of it, I kind of refused to connect, even if I felt that God was there. I was like, that's nothing to do with me, really, you know, because it was the religion stuff, and this has let me lay that aside and allow God to be part of my life each day and to get me through this each day and the problems that life continues to throw, you know. I don't have to hide anymore. I don't have to wallow in self-pity or feel that I'm a jinx or feel that I'm a victim or blame anybody else for my shit, because I've got that power in me today to face life on life's terms. Yeah, and without this programme, without you lot, I don't think I'd last much longer out there, so I'm grateful to everybody in this room today as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.